Back on halftime, our friend Aaron Torres joining us from the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast, Fox Sports Radio. You can also read him at Kentucky Sports Radio and a number of other places. And, guys, there's a couple of tweets that Aaron had over the last few days that have been highly interacted with. One of them is about Jalen Johnson deciding to quit the season with 3 weeks left for Duke. That got him about 1,000 likes. The second most interacted tweet for AT is all about his Razorbacks. He got almost 800 likes talking about how Arkansas is going to be a problem come tourney time. Now, some people might accuse you, AT, of being a bandwagon guy here, but I think those of us who have listened to you on halftime for these last 2 years, and you and I have known each other for 4 years now, these are your Razorbacks. You like to say, my Hogs. You can say this proudly now. You've been doing this a long time. So when did you start becoming a Razorback fan necessarily? When did the word "my" start showing up in your language?
So there's a very strong line of delineation that a lot of fans probably won't remember. But the PK80, the Phil Knight Invitational, not the Phil Elson Invitational, which would be much more regarded. My UConn Huskies in the final year of the Kevin Ollie era, and I had been kind of an Ollie guy. He won a national championship. How can you not be whatever? I had defended him. And I think Arkansas beat them by either 30 or 40. But that was the game that I threw my hands up in the air and I said, Arkansas, can I join your fan base? Because I cannot watch this garbage team anymore. And it actually started like that. Now, I think, one, UConn's better, so that's great for me. But two, I think obviously Coach Muss, my kind of, I don't want to say relationship with him, but my knowledge of who he is, what he was about when he got to Arkansas, I think it took it to another level where I think there were hundreds, if not thousands, of Arkansas fans that had maybe never heard of me. That when I was, day one, minute one, this guy is going to work. This is the guy that Arkansas fans needed. Obviously, I had been watching the Mike Anderson era closely, so I think those are the 2 points in time. It really happened with the PK80. And then when Muss came, I'm not going to lie, Phil, the funny thing is, it's not like I'm sitting here with a Hogs hat on singing Woo Pig Suey, 45 minutes before tip-off. But, I kind of play into it. And, and I think obviously with Muss being there, my relationship with him, and I think he enjoys it too. I think he enjoys having somebody in the media that kind of, that Hog hat metaphorically at least.
Well, I think you also, I think you have a good understanding of college basketball in general across the country and how certain fan bases are fun and certain atmospheres are fun, and there's also just a style of play that can be fun. And even though it's a little different in the style of play between Muss and Coach Anderson, this is such a fun team to watch right now. How can't you be a fan of theirs?
Well, and I think kind of I think that's why the fans appreciate me because, I interact with a lot of fans from a lot of places, and I'm actually very, I think in tune with Arkansas. Let me put it this way: there's this misconception that every fan base feels like they should win a national championship in every sport every year. That is simply not true at Arkansas. Now, maybe for baseball, Phil, and I know you guys started up and you would know about baseball, but in football and basketball, it's like we just want to be relevant. We just want to be talked about. And so when Arkansas is good, I'm usually, just because I watch all the games, I'm usually 2-3 weeks ahead of everybody else. And so, I think that's why Arkansas fans appreciate me, because I actually watch the games. When they're struggling, I can sit there and say, well, Justin Smith is out. That might have something to do with it. They're playing at Tennessee, at LSU, at Alabama. Maybe that has something to do with it. Well, I think there's a lot of guys that claim that they cover this sport that just come in and say, oh, they started 2-4 in SEC play. Now they're turning it around. What a great job. Or, what, who could have predicted this? Well, if you knew their best rebounder was hurt and they played probably the three best teams in the SEC on the road in the first 6 games of the season, you, too, probably could have known this, but you didn't. And so I think that's why a lot of Arkansas fans appreciate my coverage is it's tongue-in-cheek about being a homer or being a fan. I'm really not. I'm not, in tears when they lose, but I do watch the games. I do kind of follow the ebbs and flows of the season, and I think the fans really do appreciate it.
All right, I'm going to pass you over to SmackDown in a moment, but I wanted to ask you said this is going to be a team that's a problem come tournament time. And I'm having trouble, putting my finger on, like the top thing that makes Arkansas a problem, and they touched on it a lot in the last ESPN telecast in the Razorbacks' last game. There isn't like one thing that this team does that stands out more than anything else. They just do a lot of things really well, and that's always a problem.
Well, and I'll say this too. I don't know if the defensive metrics back it up. And first of all, I heard the same thing on the broadcast, and I agree with Jimmy Dykes, and I think it was Carl Ravitch, whoever he was calling the game with. I think they're right. Shoot the three ball well, have size. But the thing that stood out to me in that Florida game, at least early, they were really getting after it defensively. And again, I don't know if the metrics would indicate that they've gotten better over the course of the season defensively, but the effort and energy appeared to be about as good as it has been. And usually playing defense is a staple for Coach Muss. I mean, that's really what even his Nevada teams were built on. And so to see this team score so easily but struggle on the other end early was kind of jarring. And it's like, whatever, everybody's new. Like, I'm not saying like, this is a terrible job by Coach Muss or anything. It's just like it just took some time on buy-in on that end. But I think between the play of, certainly the freshmen, I think the rotation has been figured out. And I think the guys that are seeing the court are committed on that defensive end. To me, I think that that's a reflection that they are going to be a problem because I do think the defensive effort is up in addition to, of course, the ability to score the basketball.
Aaron Torres joining us here on Halftime. AT, you're a college basketball guy. We like to kind of jump around the college basketball world, and no story's been necessarily any bigger than Jalen Johnson opting out for the rest of the season for the Duke Blue Devils. And coincidentally, the first game that he didn't play with Duke, they had probably their best game of the season. So, but I'm struggling of like which side of the fence do I need to be on, because I feel like I'm kind of old school, like don't quit on your team, at least finish the year and then do your business. But then I can see the other side of it because I've never had a multi-million-dollar NBA contract on the line. I'm having a hard time trying to decipher which side I need to be on with this Jalen Johnson situation. Try to help me out here. Where should I probably fall with this situation?
Listen, first of all, don't let anybody bully you, Matt. Whatever side you feel most comfortable on, that's where you go. Okay, buddy?
Thank you,
Don't
sir.
let anybody push you around. But what I would I think two things can be true, and this story was a real kind of eye opener for me from one perspective, and I'll explain why in a minute. I think two things can be true. I think it's exactly what you said, Matt. You could argue this is maybe the right decision. Maybe he isn't fully healthy. Maybe he feels like his draft stock is where it needs to be. I actually have heard the opposite, that it's going in the wrong direction. And I think there's a legitimate argument to be made: is this the right decision or not? What is not disputable is that he quit. He quit. And I said this on my podcast. When we created the term opt-out this offseason, the intention is that players will opt back in, okay? Opting out was over legitimate health and safety concerns, and it's easy for all of us to say this now, but think back to July and August. There were questions about, can we safely play football both in the college and the NFL level, even the NBA bubble before that? Can you safely play contact sports without transmitting the virus? And so players made their own decision to opt out. Players in the NBA bubble, college football players, NFL players. But the intention is that they're going to opt back in. There's nothing Jalen Johnson is opting back into. He quit. He quit. And so when I say it was eye-opening for me, I think we're at this point, and I don't think I realized that we were at this point until I saw the situation unfold. We're now literally at the point that you can't criticize anyone for anything without you're either a hater or you're a hot take guy or you're a this or you're that. Or Joe Rothstein is a good friend of mine, and we were texting a little bit. He even came out more strong than I did that this was just straight up quitting. And people are criticizing, how dare you say. It's not a criticism. It's a fact. It's an indisputable fact. And, we live in this world. Why can't we just call it what it is? It's quitting. From my perspective, I'm not even sure, to your point, Matt, that it's the quote-unquote wrong decision.
Right.
But it's quitting. It's quitting. And, to me, it was really eye-opening this week. We have now officially gotten to this point where people in the media cannot criticize anyone for anything, or you're a hater, or you're a racist, or you're a sexist, or you hate amateur athletes, or whatever. It's unbelievable, and this thing was the one that really opened my eyes to it.
And I think when you kind of bring it back to home a little bit, a lot of our fans here kind of shared shared the similar voice when Rakeem Boyd opted out for the Razorbacks and I kind of voiced the same opinion I just did with you. Nobody in our listeners have ever had a multi-million-dollar contract on the line from the NFL. But vice versa, old school logic says you had 2 games left in the season, finish it, and then you can make your decision whatever you want. Same thing can be said here with Jalen Johnson. I mean, they're on the downhill slide of their season and fixing to wrap up the year anyway.
Let me jump in there, Matt.
Yeah.
Because I do think it's a little bit different in football. First of all, I hate to say it, but I think this is going to be the new wave in football where, your team, in a normal 12-game season, your team's 4-5 going into the last 3 games. You have nothing to play for. Guys are just going to leave. I hate it. I think that's a new reality. What I do think, however, is that this is different because Duke's ultimate goal is to win a national championship. That goal is still on the table. Now, it's very fleeting right now because they're very bad, but there is still an ACC tournament. And if you get into the ACC tournament, you can get into the NCAA tournament. Duke still has plenty to play for, where Rakeem Boyd, with due respect, and I'm not defending him because he's one of my hogs, he was in a situation where there was nothing to gain. There was no way for Arkansas to play themselves into a national championship conversation. As unlikely as it might be for Duke, that possibility is still on the table. And then one last thought on Jalen Johnson, too, and I'll toss it back to you guys. The way that I look at it, too, is quit, not quit, whatever. Let's just ask a very simple question. He claims it's over this foot injury, but he only played 8 minutes in the last game, and Coach K said that the physicality was too much for him, which it feels like maybe he's injured or maybe Coach K thinks he's soft. I don't know. If he was averaging 22 points and 11 rebounds per game, and even if Duke wasn't like a number 1 seed but was kind of on the fringe of the tournament, I find it hard to believe that if he was averaging 22 and 11 and was in contention for ACC Player of the Year, that he would have made the same decision. So again, that leads me to the conclusion that the kid quit, and it's also worth noting he cleaned out his locker, he cleaned out his dorm room, and he bounced. There's a way to do this. There's a way not to do it. Even if you don't feel healthy, there is a proper way to do it, and that is not how this kid decided to move forward.
Fair enough for me. Fair enough. And we love to kind of bring it back.
I talked to the other side, huh?
You really did. I mean, I feel like I've got that old school side to me. Just like, I get, like, if he did this for the postseason, I think it might change the narrative of this a little bit. But I completely agree with you. Doing it now and the way that he went about doing it, I 100% agree with where you're coming from.
And let me just jump in and take it a step further. There's so many, and this is becoming a more and more of a thing, and there's so many different analogies, and I've even heard people compare it to James Wiseman last year. But even James Wiseman, he got kind of a bogus NCAA suspension that no one saw coming. They thought he was going to get 4, 5, 6 games. He gets 13 games, I think it was. He's away from his teammates for 2, 3, 4 months, not 4, but probably 2.5 months at that time. And he just says, you know what, screw this, man. I'm good. I'm out. I'm leaving. This is, 1, they're in contention. And 2, again, it just goes back to you got everything left on the table. By the way, your drafts, and that's the other thing, Matt. You talk about being old school. First of all, I agree. I'm old school. You start where you finish. If you don't feel healthy, tell the coach, stand on the sideline in a polo, wave a towel, cheer on your teammates. But beyond that, again, it makes it feel like quitting because he also happened to be coming off of the fewest minutes per game he had in the game. It didn't appear to be because of injury. It looks soft. Like I'm going to say, I don't care. You can criticize me if you want. People can call in. Maybe I'll get the phone lines buzzing here. I think it looks soft, man. I think it looks soft. If he was coming off 22 and 11 and he's limping off the court like Willis Reed, that's a lot different than the scenario that we found ourselves in.
AT, we got to run, man. I appreciate your time, all your thoughts, as always. Enjoy basketball this weekend, and we'll talk about it in a week.
You're the man, brother.
All right, guys. Have a great day. Stay away from those margaritas, Matt, okay? Take care.
I think there's something to be said, too, about the idea. Like, Coach K didn't really seem to care that Jalen Johnson was.
Well, look at how well they played without him.
Saw an instance also, too, with the Little Rock Trojans. A player just decided he was quitting, and during the next game, he was sitting up in the stands. They asked Darrell Walker about that. He said he did what's best for him and what was best for the team. I have a feeling that some of the guys that opt out, I think some of these teams are saying, good. We didn't like playing with you anyway.
I got told that in high school once.
Don't forget about the Hit That Line Podcast Network. Best place to find all our online content anywhere you download your podcast, The Hog Talk, Trust in the Process, Primetime Preps, all our shows as well. It's made possible by Breeden RV Center, family-owned and operated, a no-pressure, laid-back atmosphere, always home of free maintenance for life. Stay with us.